We I started working about 13 or 14 years ago, and at that point, Flash was this huge thing in London, well, around the world. It's kind of blew up. So we started kind of playing around with Flash and doing kind of pretty large websites at that time. We did 007.com, which a lot of people hated us for because it was their dream job. I always tell this story, but I tell it again. But we got invited to a Bond premiere, which was pretty special. And it was this big schmancy do in Leicester Square. And we were walking down the red carpet, and all the photographers, the paparazzi started, flashing away. And someone at the back of these photographers kind of said, "Oh, who are they?" And somebody at the front went, "Nobody." And we went, "Oh, okay." So it wasn't necessarily the high point of my life. So we did the website for this is actually the first thing we won a BAFTA for, which was a website we did about 10 years ago, but it was for Habitat, which is Terence Conran's kind of furniture interior store. Fantastic to work on, learned a lot through doing it. But it was the first time we started to look at really looking at how people use things rather than thinking of them as users. And this will resonate, I think, quite a way through the 16 minutes I've got left. So I'm going to speed up again. But it was basically looking at thinking of a website as basically like a shop window rather than a thing on a screen. So we got a phone call from someone who was setting up an online fashion label. This is, again, pretty old. It's about 10 years ago. And they'd raised $135 million, and they wanted to put some trainers and some T-shirts and stuff online. We were like, okay, fine. So we made up a ridiculous amount of money that it was going to cost to do a magazine for them. They then told us that we had to design it in Flash, which we didn't own a copy of Flash, so we went and clubbed together, which was £99 at the time, and sat down and started to try and work out what to do. So we built this magazine. I really love that, because that's about the only existing thing left of Brew.com. They were pretty much the people that were cited as the people who caused the internet first. So that kind of ended everybody's job, but we had nothing to do with the actual main site, may I say. So I think we did quite a good job. But we did this kind of magazine which was taking traditional editors and photographers and writers and just creating these different kind of small articles online, which were then translated into 7 different languages, which we had to do, but we obviously couldn't speak Finnish, so we had to hyphenate Finnish, even though we didn't speak it, which I don't think was particularly successful, but it was fun. Again, it was just really about learning. And at the same time, as we were doing kind of these sort of things, we were playing around, again, with clients, just looking at the fact that we really thought of digital media as something that really didn't have to shout at you. It could have a quietness and a calmness, but it could really engage, could have a dialogue with something that, is fundamentally, could a butterfly be an interface? And this is actually something that did actually develop into a small interface for Habitat. So there was a lot of experimentation going on in one stream and kind of actual client work going on in the other stream. But quite often they fuse together, which is something that's happened quite a lot in my sort of working career. So we talk a lot about simplicity. I always say talk. What I actually mean is argue in the studio. But the simplicity of this is where we started. This was the first studio that I worked in out of college, and we had 3. There was me and Nick, who's on the phone, and a guy called Daljit. This is at the studio I worked at before we started all of this, called Digit. And there was 3 of us, but we only had 2 computers. So we said we post-rationalised that to say that someone was always thinking, which is obviously true. So the simplicity is, again, this sort of illustrates the simplicity to a certain degree, that we're always trying to create interactive media as having a dialogue with its audience, however that might happen. So what we actually do is create the edges of it, and people fill in the middle to a certain degree, because if you can create something that's the skeleton of it and it creates stuff itself, it's actually really beneficial to both you and the client, which I'll sort of revisit a bit later on. So we were approached by MTV to redesign one of their sites, which worked fantastically well but looked terrible. And it was basically the mechanic was that you could program your own hour of music videos, kind of package it up with 2 bumpers, which basically the beginning and the end, which is the MTV brand bit. Submit it to MTV, and they would decide whether they'd air it or not. So actually through the web, you could actually kind of get something on air. And this is, again, you know, probably about 8 or 9 years ago. So it was before Facebook, it was before MySpace, it was before social media, as it were, existed as, you know, as the normal thing it is today. So the things we found relevant about that, it's like building blocks, you build your own hour, it's simplicity, it's simple. We were a load of guys, you know, kind of playing around with stuff in the studio, so most people play computer games, and we like, you know, the aesthetics of Mario, and the simplicity of how you can create a space through these very simple geometric forms, and Star Wars because we were a load of blokes, obviously. Okay, someone obviously likes Star Wars. Yeah. I did actually meet a bloke called Yoda in Auckland, which I found kind of amazing. I said I'd give him a job. It didn't really matter what his work was like. And Blade Runner, you know, Ridley Scott's genius piece of, you know, futuristic kind of utopia, which we used as parts of reference for it. And also someone was fixing the kitchen that we, in our new studio at the time, and the detailing on this actually turned into the detailing on the site. Ormond Street Hospital, which is a kids' hospital in the UK, asked us to do some branding for a party they were having, which was a fundraiser to get enough money to build some flats for parents who couldn't afford to live in London, to stay in London when their kids were in the hospital. So they came up with this name, Make Some Noise, and they said, well, come up with something. And out of all the people that pitched for it, we thought, well, if it's Make Some Noise and it's a party, shouldn't it be sound reactive, so that you have a dialogue with the actual brand? So this is pretty much what we pitched them. So if we, after 3, we can all shout, that would be very good. So 1, 2, 3! So if we shout at the thing, it works. And the best thing about this is we install these in the actual party. So it was reacting to the kids. So it basically gives ownership of the brand to the actual kid rather than you actually kind of broadcasting things at them. And because it was generated from Flash, we could do generate all the print out of the actual interactive. We don't do print, but this was obviously a requirement. And it was kind of, again, it sort of designed itself to a certain degree. So we work a lot with the human aspect, which hopefully you're starting to pick up on. We've got 2 clients which are slightly risque, and I'm slightly worried that the commissioner's standing next to me, but hopefully he's not going to get too offended at this. We work with Coco de Mer, they're a kind of high-end adult store, I'd say. They're run by a girl called Sam Roddick, who's Anita Roddick's daughter, who was sadly deceased, I think last year, but she started the Body Shop. So we did some web stuff with them, but Sam actually asked us to put a camera in the changing room in the store. And we said, are you really sure about this? He said, yep. All our clients actually, I'm supposed to be done now. So I'm going to she asked us to put a camera in the changing room. We did. And basically you can go in there, try what you want, and upload a photograph of what you're actually doing. This is what men do in there. This is what women do in there. So I'm not going to dwell on that.